Hello and welcome back. We are going to start this lecture by introducing the nervous system. So we're moving on to the nervous system now. I want you to actually, I'm going to direct you down here and I'm going to have you just think about something that you know or a question that you have, anything from your life that you can relate to about the nervous system, and write that on your worksheet. So it could be like, my grandmother has Alzheimer's. Oh, I want, like, how does consciousness work? Anything. So go ahead and enter that into your worksheet. Okay, so we are not going to answer those big questions like how does consciousness work, but we're going to at least give you some basic idea of how the nervous system works, starting with just a quick, simple introduction to the cells of the nervous system and the cell types. Okay, so these are the questions that we're going to be answering here. First, what are the two main cell types of the nervous system? Second, what are the three parts of a neuron and what are their functions? And third, what are some of the functions of glial cells? So already, like, these two questions here kind of answer the first question. But we'll do it formally anyway. Okay, so I just want to start by saying that the nervous system is very important for maintaining homeostasis, right? So we talked about homeostasis in the first lecture. There are really two main organ systems in the body that are kind of in charge of homeostasis. And those two systems are the endocrine system, which we just finished learning about, and the nervous system. Okay, so you can kind of think of these as, like, sort of, to draw an army analogy, even though I don't really know anything about the army, you can think of these guys as the generals, right? They're in charge and they are giving orders to the rest of the organ systems in the body, which are basically kind of like the soldiers, okay? That's why all of our integrating centers are like either nervous system structures or endocrine system structures, okay? Because they're the ones that are making those decisions and deciding what to do in order to maintain homeostasis. Okay, so let's move on and start talking about the cell types of the nervous system. We have two main cell types in the nervous system. The first is neurons, okay? So neurons are the cells that carry the signals within the nervous system. They're the ones that actually, like, do the main part of the communicating, okay? This is a picture of a typical neuron and another typical neuron. So the typical neuron has kind of three main identifiable parts. The first, I'm actually going to start with this right here. The first is the cell body, okay? It's also known as the soma. Usually, like, neuroscientists call it that, but I don't know if other people do. But the cell body is kind of like, I think of it as like the part of the neuron that's like other cells. It's like the normal cell part of the cell where, like, regular cell stuff happens, okay? So the nucleus can be found in the cell body. The, like, protein synthesis is found here. Most of the organelles are found here, and so on, okay? So it's doing the housekeeping. And as we'll talk about later, it's also gonna integrate some signals, okay? Then from the cell body, we have these long extensions going in different directions, okay? So we have these extensions up here. They are called dendrites, and the function of the dendrites is basically to receive signals from other neurons, okay? Sometimes, I guess, they receive signals from things that are not neurons. And then we have this extension right here called the axon, okay? And the axon is going to carry that signal to another neuron or to its target, okay? So basically, its job is to carry the signal away from the cell body, okay? All right. Neurons communicate with each other through a structure called the synapse, Okay, so let's take a look at that. Oh, right, so neurons communicate at synapses. Let's take a look at that in the next slide. Here's a blow up of that little section of the figure from the previous slide. So what we have happening here is generally we're going to have a signal coming down the axon of one neuron, okay? We call that neuron the presynaptic neuron. Don't worry too much about these details, axon, terminal. But basically, the neuron that's bringing the signal in is called the presynaptic neuron, okay? And it's going to pass its signal on to the next neuron in the chain, which we refer to as the postsynaptic neuron, okay? There is a little space here in between the presynaptic neuron and the postsynaptic neuron. We call that the synaptic cleft. Okay, so that's kind of the basic anatomy of a neuron. I like to throw this slide in just to kind of make the point that not all neurons look like that. That's like kind of your stereotypical textbook neuron, but there's a real diversity of neuron morphologies or shapes, okay? So, so this is just to illustrate that concept. So over here we have some neurons that actually have like axons going in different directions. You can see these neurons here that have their dendrites, like this one has dendrites coming off on both sides. Oh, this is an axon, sorry. But you can see these different shapes here. This is a very lovely neuron type that's the kind of a stereotypical well-known neuron type. It's called the Purkinje cell, and you can find it in the cerebellum in the brain. But what's really interesting is that these dendrites, you can see that they kind of fan out, and they fan out kind of like within one plane. So that's kind of cool. And then here are some others.